Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Majestic Collectibles, podcast number 6. It is February 22nd, 2023. It is a light freezing rain out right now, so I'm hoping I can get through all this. We won't have any power issues. It doesn't seem to be really super bad right now, but you never know. So if there's some weird edits in this one, that's probably what it is. So today's topic... So you want to be a reseller, and I've been reselling since I was 15, before I had a driver's license. And, this is just some of my general thoughts on folks that want to be a reseller, or maybe want to take a look at it, or maybe want to, improve upon it or expand upon it if you're already reselling. It's not super detailed, so, it's one of those deals. If you want me to expand on a topic, just let me know. Leave it in the comments section, and I'll certainly try and expand on it a little bit if I can. Just to give you my background, you probably won't hear me mention this a whole lot. Might be the only time. I don't talk about it a lot, but I've been doing this for about 38 years. I think this might be my 39th year, actually, this year. And I've got... a lot of experience reselling flea markets and shows, conventions, and, of course, online. I also have degrees, a couple of business degrees. I did decide to go to school for a little bit. So I have an undergraduate degree in marketing with an entrepreneurship emphasis. That's a 4-year bachelor's degree from University of Northern Iowa. And I also have a graduate degree, and that's a master's degree in business administration from Franklin University, Columbus, Ohio. That was back in 2004, also known as an MBA. And I really don't talk about it a lot. I don't know as how it's really all that important, but I just kind of want you to know where I'm coming from on some of this stuff. So some practical experience, I guess, some... textbook stuff, however you want to look at it, a combination. So I've broken this down a little bit into, let's see, I'm looking at my note cards here, 5 parts, and this certainly isn't everything. Keep that in mind. This is more aimed at, I guess, a beginner, a starter, or somebody that's not familiar with it, so there's not a ton of detail. But the number one thing I've seen, is... when businesses fail, especially small business, and it doesn't matter if it's online or brick and mortar or whatever it is, this seems to be the number one reason. And so I'm leading off with it because it's really super important on this. And that's knowing and understanding and properly calculating your cost. It's called cost accounting if you want to go back and use some of the college-level nomenclature. Sounds snooty, doesn't it? But really all it means is you have to properly account for everything. And one of the things that really irritates me, and I'm sure you guys have seen this on YouTube, podcasts, wherever, where somebody says, I found this item for $5 and I sold it for $100 on, name your platform, and I made a quick $95 profit. So here's the problem with that. That's a complete and absolute lie, first of all. If they picked that item up for free, somebody gave it to them, they found it on the street, whatever. So if they got it for free and then sold it for $100, they didn't make $95. They didn't make $100. They didn't make $95. And I want to go into that a little bit, because if you're starting out or you're wanting, kind of wondering at the end of the month, it's like, gosh, we had... so many sales, but yet where'd all our money go? And I heard that a lot back before the internet when I was working with some small businesses at UNI a little bit. I don't want to say we did consulting, but we studied a lot of small business. We'd write up business plans and things. And this was on every single recommendation we did for small and medium businesses. And that was costs. So you have tangible costs. That's stuff should be easy to calculate, but isn't. And, here's where you need to really start developing it. This is the easiest place to develop your cost structure. So your inventory cost, what it costs to buy your inventory that you're reselling. Your overhead cost, and most people can figure those out. Your lights, your heat, your rent, whatever it is, your internet expenses, storage cost would be in there too. Two things that don't always seem to get calculated right. One is travel cost, and it's fairly easy because, the government has a set so many cents a mile, you can deduct on your business travels. And there's also kind of a set deduction too. So you can keep a logbook and track your exact miles or take the standardized deduction kind of thing. I always keep a logbook. But I can rarely get to that standardized deduction on my travel costs. But take whichever one works better for you. That's what my accountant does. And the big thing where I think people really, really fail, and I mean the percentage is huge here, guys, on this cost calculation, and that's your time. Your time is valuable. The problem is when you're a small business, sole proprietorship, even, if you're doing it with your family, partnership, doesn't really matter. People just do not properly value their time. And I've talked to a few people about this exact topic, and I'm like, what is your time worth? And everybody, most people will say, whatever the minimum wage is. $7, $8, $9, $10, $15 an hour, depends where you're at, of course. And you're kind of correct, but here's the thing. If you're just going to make minimum wage, then go get a McJob, and don't worry about this. Because if you're going to put all the extra time and effort and energy and the risk involved into building up something, a business, then you need to make more than minimum wage. And most people severely undervalue their time. Sometimes I'm like, well, give me an off-the-wall number, an hourly wage. And, I've had anywhere from $25 an hour to $100 an hour. And my answer is kind of the same as like, that's all obtainable. Obviously the higher end is going to be a lot harder to obtain, but you can attain this. And I would start out in that $25 to $35 an hour range, valuing your time. But here's the thing. You have to be very disciplined, because you can't just like take a half a day off. You can't just take a 2-hour lunch every day. You have to be very disciplined. And part of that discipline is once you start valuing your time, you will not buy the same things you normally buy for inventory, or at the very least, you will calculate their value very differently. And you will find out in a hurry that the reason you're having all these sales and you're not making much money at the end of the month or whatever your pay period or accounting period is, the biggest reason is you are not valuing your time. You're just not you're simply not making as much money as you think you're making. And I'm going to run you just through a really super quick scenario here. So we're going to go drive 10 miles to go to wherever, thrift store, fine. We're going to buy that item for $5. We're going to drive 5 miles back, and we're going to sell it, and it's going to sell for $100. So right now, the gross profit is $95, all right? But you also have to take into account your travel cost, which I used, obviously, it's a 20-mile round trip. So let's just say it's 50 cents a mile. It's actually, last I looked, higher than that, but this is easy math. So just your drive up and back was $10. And people don't think that, So right there, you got $15, not $5 into this item. The other thing is, if this took you an hour, this whole round trip, purchasing and coming back, took you an hour in time, then you need to figure in what your hourly rate is. If it's $20 an hour, then you went from $5, okay, then you went from $15 with the travel cost, and if you make $20 an hour, well, all of a sudden that's $35 you got into this thing, right? And that's true. This time thing is a real cost, because if you do not value your time, you're just saying, oh, I got plenty of time, or I don't keep track of that, it's not going to go well. It's going to be very hard to grow your business because you're not going to be able to make good decisions. So you went from a $95 profit, and you're going to knock off, $35, right? That's where we're at on this thing. And so that puts you right at what, $60? So, your $95 profit is in reality a $60 profit. And we haven't even talked about your overhead. So when you have all your inventory cost, it's really easy. Take your lights, heat, your utilities, storage cost, internet cost, cell phone cost. And if you work at home, which I do, you can take a percentage of those, percentage of the gross. So you can't take like your whole internet bill off, but whatever percent, and you need to talk to an accountant. I am not an accountant, and I'm not a tax attorney. You'll have to talk to them, but you can take off a percent of your base cost. So if your total electrical bill for your house is $100 for the month, you might get to take $25 deductible as a business cost for that. But you have to know your numbers. But the point is, we're at $60, and we have not even figured in your overhead. Now, in a single item like that, it's not going to matter. Because your overhead is more or less a fixed cost, so you can figure that out on average every month. But it's probably going to be, not a lot, but it adds up over time. So if you're only buying one or two items, it's not going to cover your overhead, right? So let's say you need an extra, there's $2 worth of your fixed cost overhead in this item, which would probably be really, really super high, to be honest with you. But just to give you the example, so now your 60 is down to 58. And here's another big mistake. I talked about storage costs for people who have storage units. And they are just a complete expense. Guys, I am telling you right now, and I have a storage unit. I have a climate-controlled storage unit. If you've watched my YouTube videos with this action figure collection, I didn't have a choice, okay? I mean, there's no way I was going to be able to store that here on the premises, and they're much safer and easier to deal with there. But I don't have a death pile. So if you have a death pile and you are paying to store that death pile, that is a complete lead anchor, okay? You're going right to the bottom of the ocean with that thing. So that's got to be part of your overhead. And a lot of people, for some reason, think this storage stuff is cheap. Oh, I'm only paying $40, $50, $60, $80 a month. Well, if you're paying $50 a month, that's $600 a year. And I get it, it's deductible. But if you don't need to have that, why have it? Especially if the inventory in there is not being sold. If it's just for like death pile stuff, that's a complete loss all the way around. But that's it. That's kind of in a nutshell on your cost. But that $5 item that was purchased wherever and sold wherever for $100, you did not make $95 on that. And that's typically the difference I see in small businesses when they don't count the cost properly, is they're coming out, in this case, right at 30% short of where they think they are. And so know your cost. Number one deal on there. Sit down, figure it out. It's not really that hard. There's other tutorials and YouTube videos out there. And your situation is unique. And we'll talk about this a little later, but you really need to have somebody, accountant, tax attorney, somebody like that can help you with that. The number two deal right behind the cost is to value your time. And we talked about this already a little bit. But you can never, ever, ever ignore the value of your time. It's the most overlooked cost. And, again, I talked about discipline with the time, but time is both, you've heard the phrase, time is money, right? Well, it's money, both making money and at a cost. And you need to figure in that you're going to get paid for your time. It's not going to be just a cost. In other words, you're not just throwing your time away and not counting it. And this will change what you buy. I mean, if you normally buy stuff like this item we just talked about, think it's $5, but then if you realize, hey, I'm not going to make $95 on this, I'm going to make 50 or 60, you'll be in good shape. You're still going to buy it for $5 either way, right? But you're not going to think you made 95. You're going to understand, because your time has been calculated into this, that, you're getting paid for your time now out of that. So that lowers the profit, but it puts money in your pocket because your time is being calculated properly. And, I calculate my time when I travel to look at a collection, especially if I have like an overnight in a hotel room. If I go to a show, a flea market, a small convention, I don't do big conventions. I guess I've never really set up at them, just gone to visit. But your time is involved in that. So, just locally, if I live close to the show that's at the local mall here, I have probably 4 hours set up, and I don't do the hotel because it's like 15 minutes away at the most with traffic. Then the next day is probably around 13 hours. I'm standing around there. The second day is probably around 8 hours of work, and then another 3 to 4 hours of teardown. So really over a two day and one evening span, because normally we set up like Friday night and go home Sunday, but figure a couple days in there. You know what? I've got basically out of 48, well, probably more like 54 hours, I've got 24 hours, right at 24 hours of work of just sitting in that mall over 2 days, if it's 13 one day and 8 the second day, that's going to be 21 hours minimum. And don't think I don't calculate that. And there's some shows, I sit down and I figure, boy, I've got to do this many dollars at a show to cover this. My time is valuable. I could be listing on eBay, which takes time, but I can list a lot more items and I know what sells, and I would make a lot more money than going to that show. I could also be, going to a movie, having some recreation with the family, stuff like that. That's also valuable. So, I certainly 100% value my time. Now everybody's going to say, well, what do you value your time at? And it started out pretty low. And this is back when the minimum wage was probably like $6, so it's been a while. But, when I first wanted to do it, I wanted $20 an hour, then I wanted 25. And I was able to grow that. It didn't grow overnight. It's taken a few years, but I'm probably pretty close right now, just a little over $50 an hour, probably around $52, $53 an hour. And that's the kind of money that a lot of people are making in some pretty good jobs. Now, the caveat there is I don't have health insurance, right? I don't have a 401k. All right. I do contribute to an IRA fund, but again, you have to be disciplined and do that yourself. So, it's pretty good money, but there are some things you need to plan for. So that's it. That's my thing on the valuing your time. And there's a lot more to it than that. Again, you need to sit down and calculate and think about it a little bit. Part 3, source. This is tough. And everyone's going to say, oh, I do it this way, I do it that way. It's tough. Very difficult. This is probably the most closely guarded secret for most resellers and small businesses. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of money, learning from mistakes and errors to get really good at this sourcing. And you're not going to get anybody to give the secrets up very quick. And I'm not going to give you my secrets. I'm not telling you nothing. But I'm going to state some obvious things. So the sourcing deal, and I know there's a lot of thrifters out there, and I have no problem with going to thrift stores, Salvation Army, whatever, auctions, whatever. But you have to calculate your time. So if you're going to stand around at an auction all day, if you got to pay shipping, if it's an online auction, you know, if you have travel, if you have time standing around, if it takes you, you know, if you go 2 days a week and it takes you 4 to 6 hours each day, you have to calculate your time in that. And what you're going to find out is the obvious thing is you need to find a way to do this and buy in bulk so your cost per item comes down. And you'll look at some of the successful YouTube guys. You know what, guys? If you look at their inventory, if they show it to you, they have stacks and stacks and stacks of inventory. They buy in bulk, break it down. And if you really want to make money, and I'm talking 6 figures, you know, if you want to have gross sales of $100,000 or better, it's going to be really hard to do via thrifting. At least very hard to do consistently, because you're going to get burned out. You're going to get burned out. You know, this big action figure collection I bought at the end of 2001, back in August 2001, also came with 35,000 comics and, I don't know, 30 or 40 fruit boxes of trading cards, and open trading card boxes. Very hard collection to handle because of the size of it. You know, but the price per piece was pretty minuscule. And, you know, if it was all junk, it wouldn't have worked. But there's some good stuff in there. But still, you know, I'm going into the end of February, and I'm still probably a month away from searching through all those boxes yet. So I've got 18 months into just the action figure portion of that collection. So, you know, there's some time involved. You have to calculate it. But if you can buy in bulk and buy the larger items and then figure out how to deal with them, you know, that's probably going to be your best long-term bet. And I love going to yard sales, you know, those, and those highway garage sales, whatever they're called, you know, you go down the highway and you get all these towns involved. I think that's a blast. I don't have time to do it. I flat out do not have the time to do any of that. And, you know, as much fun as they are, it's not going to make me anywhere near the money I'm making now. So that's kind of my take on the sourcing. Here's a saying that if you've been around veteran resellers, again, doesn't have to be online, anywhere, you will hear this. And that's: a reseller makes money by buying. If you don't have it, you can't sell it. So a lot of people think, well, you make all that money selling. Actually, you make your money on buying. You make your money on getting a good product, you know, a resaleable product at a good price and breaking it down. Because if you buy it right and it's saleable product, the sales are there. Okay, it's just a matter of, do you have to sell it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you know, something like that. But if you buy it right, you know, the sales will come, the profits will come. But if you're not buying your product right, if you're not sourcing it economically at a good price, you know, you're going to have to get top dollar or above market in some cases for all of it. And that's really tough. That's really tough to keep generating revenue on that. So, you know, keep that in mind. So part of this deal with the sourcing, and this we talked about a little bit in the previous podcast, and that's capacity. So you need to keep your markup and capacity in mind when buying inventory. So that big collection I bought, I did not have the capacity to handle that. I went out and bought it. I got the storage unit. I rented the U-Haul trucks, and I got a bunch of people to help me out to bring it back. I could not have done any of that on my own. None of it. My family helped me out. Chad and Corey, a couple of my buddies up there in Minnesota helped me out, and the guy I bought it from had some guys to help out. So it took a number of us to move, but that's your capacity. And capacity is expensive. Storage units are expensive. But if you have it available, it allows you to buy larger inventory at better deals. So if you want to tear down a bunch of pallets, I've never done this, so I'm not advocating it, but if you want to do these leftover or return pallets or whatever they are from wherever, you're going to need some space. You might fit 2, 3, 4 pallets in your garage. I'd rather have my expensive car in the garage. I can tell you that. You just need the space or capacity to do that. And the capacity is not just space. Having the capacity also saves you time, which is incredibly valuable. Talked about that already. Space, which is expensive but valuable. Processing speed, which goes back to time. How fast can you get through it? And the other part about capacity that we haven't talked about here, money. So, if you want to be a reseller and you're just starting out, I have to tell you, you really need to have access to cash. If I go someplace and I'm on a collection and I don't like to travel with cash for obvious safety reasons, but I have to be able to have a bank, and I'm lucky enough my bank has a few branches, but I can go into those branches and say I need X amount of money, and 45 minutes later I'm good. I can walk out and I can buy that collection, right? But I'll be honest, you really need to have about $10,000 cash in your pocket, or checking account or whatever, but it has to be liquid, to really start taking advantage of inventory purchases, larger purchases. And that can be really tough when you're starting out. Absolutely, it can be a killer. And, I wish there was a way around it. And the interest rates now are really shot up. Even a year and a half ago and before, when they were literally giving away money, the interest rates were low. You can go borrow money at a very low rate and pay it back. And that's going to be tough to do right now. And that's going to be hard on emerging resellers or resellers that aren't very liquid, that maybe have some valuable assets but don't have cash or can't turn them into cash quickly. So that's part of your capacity when you're sourcing. So keep all that in mind. I know I threw a lot at you there, but just something to think about. Part 4 should be obvious. List, sell. Obviously, if you're not online, the listing doesn't make anything. But consistency is what you're looking for here. So if you've got your inventory purchased, right price, right quantity, everything we talked about, it still has to sell it. Most of the selling, if you do shows, retail of any type, conventions, booth sales, presentation is important, professionalism is important, but the items will sell. Just be professional, look professional about it if you're meeting with the public. Online, it's no secret there. You just have to list. I try and list 20 items a day on my eBay account. I don't sell online anywhere else, and I talked about that last podcast where there just doesn't seem to be anything out there that really replicates the depth and breadth of eBay. It does have faults, but they're the 800-pound gorilla, and there's a reason for that. But either way, whether you're online or at shows or conventions, a good rule of thumb that I use is I always look for multiple places to sell. And I sell a lot online. Most of my revenue comes online. I'm in a small market here. I sell at flea markets, three a year. I sell at small collectibles conventions, pop culture, comics, whatever you want to call it. I did 11 last year. I'm not doing that many this year. That was really hard on a broken old body like mine. So I'm probably going to cut that back a little bit. But it was worth it. I mean, I did well. But when you're older, I got to tell you, you just sometimes you can't do as much as you used to. But another place to sell, and this kind of goes back to my death pile speech, sermon, whatever you want to call it. I sell on auction. I have a booth at the local antique mall, and I dump stuff on a consignment auction. I don't have a death pile. I absolutely, positively do not have a death pile. Death piles do not sell. There's no reason to have one. I break everything down when I get a collection. What I want online, what I want at the shows, what's going to the antique mall, what I want on the consignment auction. If there's anything after that, I got to be honest, it goes in the garbage. Okay? It's just not worth hassling with. Do not have a death pile. Big part about costs, time, and selling. Get rid of the death pile, guys. Do not have one. Okay, my storage unit is not a death pile. I have a lot of stuff in there, though, that big collection I bought, but I routinely am going in there, pulling stuff out, sorting it. You've seen all my unboxing videos, right? And selling it. In fact, after I'm done with this, I got to shoot about 4 more videos. I got about 12 more boxes here I got to get through for that. You'll see them in about a month because I'm not far out in the videos. I'm trying to get this finished while I still have time before the show season starts to get through the boxes. But list, sell, don't have a death pile, have multiple sources. And, it doesn't have to be fancy. My antique mall, does not make me a ton of money, but my sales in there are in the low 5 figures. I'll tell you right now, and again, I don't talk about this much, but my gross sales just at the antique mall are between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. Okay, my auction sales right now, and of course those vary a little more depending on the economy and the material you have. But that's probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 a year gross sales, and just those 2 items. And those are the 2 smallest revenue sources I have. All right, so don't poo-poo that. It may take you a while to get started and get things ramped up and get a system going that works for you, but get it sold. Get it sold. It's just a burden and a cost sitting there in a death pile or sitting there waiting to get to it. So make sure you have the capacity and make sure you keep working at it. It's a lot of work. These guys that make it sound easy on YouTube drive me nuts. Oh, I drove down here and picked this up. Well, great. Everybody gets lucky once in a while. You got to do it, how many hundreds of more times to make real money at it. So diversify your income stream. Don't have a death pile. And, just keep working at it. Part 5, last part here. I know everybody's cheering. If you're still listening, I really appreciate it. This is a little longer than the other ones, but I'm almost done. Part 5, if you want to be a reseller, find your best friends in business. And depending on your business, this can vary. So I picked out 4 friends. I call them friends. Yeah, you're going to pay them, so they're, just like, I guess, elementary and junior high, they're those kind of friends. Whatever. First one is a lawyer, and, everybody gets nervous over this. And I don't use my attorney a lot. I'm not running around suing people, but it really helps with business permits, lease rent agreements, if you have to enter into those, contracts. They can give you advice there, making sure, you're being protected. You're not getting the wool pulled over your eyes on that. There's always a chance of litigation where, I'm in America, man. I think, you have to sue somebody before you're 20 or you're not really a citizen anymore. It's ridiculous. But you do need to protect yourself, and they can help you do that if you're thinking of doing a business or setting up a business. Just what laws may be applicable there and things along those lines. In my case, my lawyer is also a tax attorney, so I kind of doubled up there. So he does my business and personal taxes, they're combined and things. So if you can do something like that, that'll save you a little bit of money and one less friend you got to pay off somewhere. But accountant is important, and again, taxes, but they can also help you with cash flow and liquidity and cost accounting. So if you're having trouble thinking of cost or tracking things, they should have a pretty good idea of what to look for, what costs and things, that you need to account for in your business. So that's, always good to have an accountant. And, my wife's a really good bookkeeper. We do the bookkeeping, we track it all, but then we turn it into our accountant or tax lawyer to finish that up. So you still have to track stuff, keep track of your records and things. But again, they're always in front of the tax laws, deductions, stuff like that. So it's just easier and it's less stress for us to do that. And it works out really, really well. Your banker is another one. So again, we talked about having capacity and having cash. And here's the thing, available cash to pay bills, which is always important, and purchase inventory. And what if you need, what if your printer craps out? You need a new printer. Your computer gets hit by lightning, which for whatever reason, we've had like 4 of them over the last 20 years. Like every 4 or 5 years, something happens and it gets barbecued. What if you need to rent a vehicle? Or in my case, I have a work van where I go to shows, and carry things and go to collections. But you need to have some cash flow, especially for tough times. If the economy slows down, the bills don't. Yeah, I know, you noticed that, right? So you may have to take out a short-term loan, but you need to have that relationship and develop that. And, it can be a credit union. It can be a savings and loan. I would not recommend any of the high-interest places like payday loan stuff and things. They certainly have their uses, but they're very, very, very expensive. And you can get over your head or underwater, whatever term you want to use, really quick. So I would recommend not doing that. But, if you got it, you got it. I get it. But you're going to have availability to cash. Unless, of course, you win the lottery or you've got, gold bars someplace buried under the house, floorboards or whatever. The last one, and to wrap up the final part 5 here, the last buddy you're going to need is your insurance agent. And even if you don't have a storefront, you need insurance, right? I mean, I'm traveling down the road in a vehicle. You just don't know what's going to happen. So, that needs to be part of it. And you need to be honest with your insurance agent and say, well, I'm using it for business, and make sure that qualifies, because you may have to add a rider to that policy, or there may be an exclusion that says, this is just for personal use on like a vehicle or something. So you really need to have an insurance agent, to walk you through and make sure you really are covered on stuff. Also your buildings and equipments, your vehicles, slip and fall if you're retail, stuff like that. You just like an attorney, these guys will help you protect yourself. It's not going to be cheap. I'm going to tell you that right now. You may just buy the insurance you think you need and save a few bucks. And if there's some holes in that coverage, it's going to cost you 100 times whatever you saved. So just get a professional insurance agent, walk them through everything in your situation, and make sure you are protected. And if you have employees, or you travel with a family member or somebody to a show or whatever it is, just make sure you're covered on it. The last part I want to add here is inventory loss and insurance. There usually isn't any for it. If you want to cover your inventory under insurance, they basically make you lock it up and throw away the key. And even then, it's often not covered for fire or flood, or you've got to add special protections or special riders or pay extra money. It's really, really tough to get a lot of your inventory covered. And what they typically do is they'll reimburse you for what you paid for it. So, if you bought something 10 cents on the dollar, you're going to get your dime back, but you're not going to get your dollar. And there goes your profit. So talk to your agent, and that varies by state. See what is available and what isn't available, but don't be shocked if, your inventory is not automatically covered and it's very, very expensive if it is going to be covered. So just a heads up there. And, of course, again, your situation is going to dictate on how you go about any of these. And if you talk to these folks, they can really help you out. Another resource that's at least really good where I'm at, you might have something through a local community college that has a business program. You can even take some non-credit courses, say for a couple hours here or there. A lot of them are online now. You can ask professors, instructors, a lot of which have been in business or run businesses for a long time. So that could be another resource for you there for any of this stuff. And that's it. That's what I've got. If you listen to the whole thing, thanks for sticking with me on that. Check out our other videos, guys. And, hey, I'm almost out of ideas for these podcasts again. So haven't had any suggestions for a while on podcast topics. So send them along. Help me out a little bit. Leave me your questions and your comments. And thanks for watching.